Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Doris Day's weird connection to the Manson murders. Of course, we all know Doris Day. She was an amazing singer and actress, and her Hollywood career spanned over 20 years before she decided to leave Hollywood and become an animal activist. I've just finished reading her 1975 autobiography, Doris Day, Her Own Story. Not only did Doris write the book, but she also had excerpts from people in her life, some of which I would like to read for you a little bit later. As I mentioned before, Doris's Hollywood career spanned over 20 years, but she always had this image of being the girl next door. And this was mainly because of the roles that she played early in her career. She made a lot of nostalgic musicals when she was working as a contract player at Warner Brothers. Musicals like Calamity Jane, On Moonlight Bay, By the Light of the Silvery Moon, and those kind of roles stuck with her. But she was also notorious later in her career for keeping up the squeaky clean image by not doing anything really sexual or racy, which was really starting to come into media in the late 60s. So how exactly does Doris Day relate to the Manson murders? Well, it all comes down to her son, Terry. Now, Terry was the product of Doris's first marriage. She actually had 4 marriages. Get a girl. And her first marriage was to a man called Al Jordan. Now, Al Jordan was a musician, and she met him as she was touring with big bands at the time as the girl singer. As soon as she married Al, though, things went bad really quickly. He was violent, he was jealous, he was not a good man. And she fell pregnant really quickly. She was only about 17. Al did not want the baby. He did everything he possibly could to get rid of this baby. He would hit her, he would try and force her to have abortions. It was just not good. Doris vowed that as soon as she had the baby, she would leave the marriage, and she did pretty much that. She escaped back to Ohio with her mother and left Terry, her baby, with her mother. She went back on the road with the big bands in order to raise enough money that she could send back to support Terry. When she was touring again, of course, she met another man, her second husband, George Wilder. Now, he was from Hollywood, so they moved back to Hollywood together, and this is when Doris got her big break. And that marriage really didn't last long at all. I think it was her shortest one. So Doris became a movie star. She became a movie star. It wasn't, well, the way she puts it, it really wasn't that difficult for her. She became a movie star. And she met her third husband, and his name was Marty Melcher. Doris finally felt like she had a stable home that she could bring Terry into. She had a job, she was working in the pictures. She had a man, she had Marty, and she bought a home in Toluca Lake. And so Terry came out to finally live with his mother. And when they got married, Marty adopted her son Terry, who was about 10 by this point, and he became Terry Melcher. That's a lot of background, but I swear it's all gonna come full circle. As Terry grew up and became a teenager, things with him and Marty were not going well. Like, they really started to clash. And as soon as Terry could get out of the house, he did. He was so driven, and he was also felt like he was only known as Doris Day's son. Like, he was only but going to be successful because he was Doris's son, and he really didn't like that idea. So he was really determined to forge his own path. He went to Columbia Records and became a music producer. Now, Terry was actually really, really influential in his time. He was this young, cool, hip guy who had an ear for up-and-coming sounds. He signed the Byrds, he worked with the Mamas and the Papas, he was good friends with all the Beach Boys, he even sang backup vocals on their albums. Like, Terry was amongst it, and he was actually one of the people who was really responsible for that surf rock, beachy, Californian 60s sound. Like, that Beach Boys sound is Terry. He was also a founder and on the board, a producer for the Monterey Pop Festival, which was this music festival that was responsible for launching so many people's careers. Like Janis Joplin, Otis Redding, Jimi Hendrix, like all these people that he was really responsible for making them stars. He was living. He had the life. He was this top music producer. He was earning $250K a year, which is like nearly $2 million in today's money. He was dating hot women. His girlfriend at the time was Candice Bergman, which we all know Candice, but at the time, like, she was smoking. She's smoking now, but she was smoking back then. And he had this really cool property up in the hills that looked over Los Angeles, the lights of Los Angeles, and would hold these sick parties where these young Hollywood stars would come and just, he was living it, okay? He was happy and fulfilled because he was no longer just Doris Day's son, like he was Terry Melcher, music producer. Right. So here is where Manson comes into the picture. We all know that he had his weird culty family up in an abandoned ranch up in the valley. Gross. Terry was constantly trying to find new up-and-coming acts. And one of Terry's scouts, Greg Jacobson, told Terry that there was this like weird hippie commune thing happening out in the valley and that he had to come check it out. And Terry was really intrigued. But as soon as he got there was like weird vibes, just really weird. There was like 40 women and 3 dudes and all these babies, and they were literally living off trash, and it was just sad and weird. But the family had been practicing this big audition for Terry, so he sat there and listened to it. And he says in his little excerpt in this book that musically, they were nothing special. They weren't bad, but they weren't good. They just sounded like every other person on the boulevard trying to busk. He said that after about an hour, they sang for him for an hour. He said the usual non-committal things like record producer-y things like, oh, that sounded pretty good. That was a nice blend of voices, etc., etc. But Manson really, really pressured him. Like, Manson had in his mind that he was going to be Jesus / rock star. So Terry thought, oh, I have this friend who has a van with some recording equipment in the back, so I'll just bring him up here next week and that'll get him off my back. So they did. They came back a week later and recorded a few songs, and Terry was like, okay, cool, that's that. Goodbye. But Manson had a totally different idea in his head. He thought basically that Terry had promised him, like, I'm gonna sign you. You're the next big thing. I'm gonna make you a star. And obviously that wasn't gonna happen. And so when Terry kind of gave Manson the flick, Manson was angry. Alright, here's where Doris Day comes back into the picture. Full circle. As I mentioned, Doris was married to Marty Melcher. They were actually married for 17 years until he died. Now there's a whole story about that it's a whole story of its own. Like, I could make a whole video about that, but we're just going to keep it simple for this time. When Marty died, Terry was the one that discovered that Marty had invested all of Doris's money from her whole career into dud investments. He'd basically embezzled all her money, all $22 million, every dime that she'd made her whole career. It was gone. She was skint broke. And he'd also signed her up to do a 5-year television contract that she had no clue about until after Marty died. It was horrible. At this time, Terry had to step up and really help his mother. He was going to court proceedings, lawyers' meetings. He became producer for her TV show. Like, he was running around trying to fix her life basically and put his life on the back burner. His career was on the back burner. He was just doing everything he could to help his mother. And including that, he left his house up in the hills that he was renting, a house on Cielo Drive, and decided to move into his mother's Malibu beach home. For multiple reasons. 1, because for tax purposes for Doris. And 2, because at that time in Malibu, if a house was empty, like, people would just come in and squat in it. Like, it was weird. It was the 60s, okay? I feel like I have to do this when I say it was the 60s. So Candy and Terry were now living in Doris's Malibu house, and new tenants took up the house in the hills on Cielo Drive, Roman Polanski and his wife Sharon Tate. I think we know where this is going. In August 1969, 5 people were brutally murdered in that house, including Sharon and her unborn child. People believe that Manson sent his people there that night to kill Terry. And when they figured out Terry wasn't living there, they just decided to go ahead and kill everybody in the house anyway. But other people have indicated that Manson knew that Terry wasn't living in the house anymore. He definitely knew. And Terry said that there had been a telescope that was on the balcony of the Malibu house that was stolen one night. And he believes that Manson himself had stolen that, sort of to tell Terry that he knew that he left the Hollywood house and that he knew where he was living and he was going to find him. This whole thing, on top of all his mother's problems that he was dealing with, sent Terry into a complete spiral. He became basically a recluse. He was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol and was prescribed tranquilizers by his psychiatrist. He was just a full mess. He was terrified at the Manson trial. He had to be sedated in order to give evidence at the trial. He even broke up with Candy because she was trying to help him and he was pushing away the help, and the poor thing, it was not good for him. It all culminated when Terry got into a massive motorcycle accident where he was basically hit by a car, flew off the motorcycle and landed standing and shattered every bone in both of his legs. Ouch. He was in hospital for over 6 months and Doris was there every day holding her son's hand and helping him through it. And the silver lining is that it really repaired their relationship. It built a relationship that they hadn't previously had. And they came out of it not only mother and son, but good friends that could talk about anything. So there you go. That is Doris Day's weird connection to the Manson murders. Crazy, right? I know I didn't go much into the actual murders in this video, but I thought there's so much information about that. I thought the Doris Day connection to the Manson murders was a really cool little Hollywood tale. I hope you enjoyed that video. Please let me know if you did, or if you have any other topics you think would be interesting for me to cover. Please write them in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.